I am Alex, and today, I bring you a story that will shake the very foundation of what it means to be family. Imagine devoting your entire life to hard work, only to watch your sibling, who never lifted a finger, receive all the praise, love, and admiration. That is exactly what happened to Eleanor Davis. She built her success through discipline and sacrifice, while her sister, Ava, crafted an illusion of wealth and generosity, until one devastating betrayal exposed it all. But here is the real question: what would you do if the people you loved the most were blind to the truth? If they chose a lie over your loyalty? Tonight, we unravel a story of deception, justice, and redemption. Stay with me, because this is one you won't forget. Eleanor Davis, a 38-year-old senior investment strategist at Morgan & Parker, sat in her corner office overlooking the New York skyline. The morning sun reflected off the towering glass buildings, but her focus remained on the financial reports glowing on her screen. She was a powerhouse in the investment world, known for her discipline, precision, and an unwavering work ethic. Her name carried weight in boardrooms, and her decisions shaped billion-dollar transactions. Yet, despite all her achievements, Eleanor often felt an unsettling void, a silence that even the city's constant hum could not fill. Her phone buzzed on the desk. A message from the family group chat. She hesitated for a moment before unlocking it. "Eleanor, it has been too long. We are having dinner at La Belle Vue next Thursday. Ava has exciting news. You will be there, right?" The message was from her mother, Patricia Davis. It carried the usual undertone of expectation, a subtle mix of invitation and obligation. Eleanor's fingers hovered over the screen before she swiped up, revealing the latest social media post from her younger sister, Ava. A carefully staged photo showed Ava, their parents, and a group of friends seated at a candlelit rooftop restaurant. Ava, dressed in the latest designer fashion, smiled at the camera, a cocktail in hand. The caption read, "Grateful for these moments. Family first. Living my best life." Eleanor exhaled sharply, setting her phone down. The image was all too familiar. Ava, 30, had built an online persona of effortless luxury and success. With nearly 100,000 followers, she branded herself as a lifestyle influencer, but Eleanor knew most of those numbers were artificial, purchased to maintain an illusion of influence. Their parents, however, were oblivious, constantly praising Ava for embracing the modern world and carving her own path. Growing up in their Connecticut home, the Davis sisters had been raised under vastly different expectations. As the eldest, Eleanor had been held to the highest standards: academic excellence, leadership in extracurriculars, and an early understanding of financial responsibility. "You must set an example," her mother often reminded her. The Davis name means something. Ava, in contrast, had been given limitless freedom. Missed assignments were excused as a creative mind wandering, poor grades dismissed with a casual, "not everyone thrives in academics." While Eleanor spent her summers in advanced courses, Ava traveled with friends, indulging in experiences their parents readily funded. Eleanor had worked tirelessly, earning a scholarship to Princeton, then grinding through the relentless world of finance to build a career of real influence. Meanwhile, Ava had dropped out of college and rebranded herself as a digital entrepreneur, living off credit cards and brand collaborations that barely covered her rent. At every family gathering, their parents boasted about Ava's independent spirit and social media reach. Eleanor's achievements, the promotions she had fought for, the deals she had closed, were barely acknowledged. A flicker of frustration tightened in her chest. It was not jealousy, she never wanted the superficial world Ava inhabited. But it was painful to realize that no matter how much she accomplished, she would never be the daughter her parents openly admired. She glanced back at the message. Dinner at La Belle Vue. A high-end venue, undoubtedly chosen by Ava. An evening where her sister's image of success would be celebrated, while Eleanor would sit there, expected to offer polite congratulations. Her phone vibrated again. This time, a direct message from her mother. Ava has done something truly special. She is making this family proud. You should support her more, Eleanor. Life is not just about work. Eleanor's jaw clenched. The irony was almost laughable. Ava, who had never built anything of real value, was now the golden child, while Eleanor, who had shouldered every burden alone, was treated as if she was missing something. She turned off her phone and leaned back in her chair, staring out at the city. She had long since stopped seeking validation from her parents. Her success was her own. But sometimes, she wondered if she had sacrificed too much to earn it. Eleanor Davis knew her place in the family. It had been carved out for her long before she was old enough to understand it. She was the responsible one, the overachiever, the daughter who sacrificed weekends for advanced coursework, who never complained when she had to tutor Ava through high school math, even when her sister barely paid attention. Ava, on the other hand, had always been the free spirit. The one who charmed her way out of trouble, who never had to face real consequences. Their parents saw Eleanor's success as expected, something owed to the family name. But Ava's smallest accomplishments, posting a photo that went viral, getting an invite to a celebrity event, were met with glowing praise. Eleanor remembered the first time she realized the playing field was never going to be fair. She had been 12, hunched over the dining table, preparing for a regional math competition. Their mother, Patricia, had hovered nearby, reminding her that she needed to win, that coming in second was not an option. Across the room, Ava, 8 at the time, was sprawled on the couch watching television. She had failed a spelling test that day, but instead of being reprimanded, she was comforted. Not everyone is meant to be good at tests, their mother had said, stroking Ava's hair. She has a creative soul. That moment stayed with Eleanor. The first crack in the illusion of fairness. Now, as an adult, she had long stopped expecting recognition. But that did not mean it did not sting. She sat at her desk, scrolling through the latest messages in the family group chat. A new post from her mother caught her eye. It was a photo of Ava at a luxury resort, posing by an infinity pool with their parents at her side. The caption read, "Blessed to be making memories with our wonderful daughter Ava. She treated us to the most amazing trip. So proud of the strong woman she's become." Eleanor's fingers curled around her phone. A deep, familiar ache pressed into her ribs. She stared at the caption, at the way it seemed so effortless for her parents to express their pride in Ava. When was the last time they had posted something like that about her? When was the last time they had acknowledged her achievements outside of a brief, obligatory, good job at the dinner table? But this was not just about a post. This was about the years of being overlooked. The years of coming home with straight A's, only to have her father nod approvingly before turning his attention back to Ava's latest interest. The years of pushing herself harder, hoping one day they would see her the way they saw her sister. She scrolled down, her stomach tightening as she read the next message. "Ava truly brings so much joy to this family," her mother had written. "Eleanor, you should take some lessons from her. Life isn't just about work." A sharp, bitter laugh escaped her lips. Take lessons from Ava? The same Ava who had spent years living off credit cards and brand sponsorships, who had never held a real job, who had manipulated their parents into funding every new venture she dreamed up. The unfairness of it burned. It was not jealousy. Eleanor did not want Ava's life. She did not want to spend her days curating a perfect online image, pretending to be someone she was not. But the idea that their parents, the same parents who had drilled discipline and responsibility into Eleanor from childhood, now considered Ava to be the ideal daughter. That was a wound she did not know how to heal. Her mind replayed all the times she had bailed Ava out. The time in high school when Ava had shoplifted a necklace on a dare, and Eleanor had convinced the store owner to let her sister go. The time Ava had maxed out her first credit card and begged Eleanor to cover the payments so their parents would not find out. And now, it seemed, Ava had outdone herself. Somehow, she had managed to convince their parents that she was not just successful, but generous. That she was the one taking care of them. Eleanor clicked on another photo. This time, it was of their parents in front of the Eiffel Tower, dressed in new designer clothes, their smiles wide. "Ava gifted us this trip," their father had commented. "She always puts family first." Her breath caught. She knew Ava's financial situation. Knew that her sister was drowning in debt, that her lavish lifestyle was built on borrowed time and borrowed money. She also knew, with a sickening certainty, that Ava had not paid for that trip with her own funds. A memory surfaced, one she had dismissed at the time. 3 months ago, Ava had stopped by her apartment. It had been unusual, Ava rarely visited unless she needed something. She had been strangely sweet that day, making tea, chatting about childhood memories. Eleanor had been distracted, working from home, barely paying attention. And now, as she put the pieces together, she felt the blood drain from her face. She reached for her laptop, heart pounding, and logged into her bank account. A list of transactions appeared on the screen, and there it was, thousands of dollars in charges to luxury hotels, first-class flights, Michelin-starred restaurants. Her credit card had been stolen. The realization hit her like a freight train. Ava had taken it. And she had used it to finance an entire European vacation, all while letting their parents believe she had paid for it herself. Eleanor's hands trembled as she reached for her phone. For a long moment, she stared at the screen, her mother's words still glowing in the chat. "Ava truly brings so much joy to this family." Eleanor swallowed the lump in her throat, her grip tightening. She had spent her entire life being the responsible one. The one who cleaned up Ava's messes. The one who played by the rules, who never asked for more than she earned. But this time was different. This time, she was not going to fix it. This time, she was going to make Ava face the consequences. Eleanor's pulse pounded as she scrolled through the fraudulent charges on her bank statement. Luxury hotels, first-class flights, Michelin-starred dinners, all totaling over $50,000. The sheer audacity of it made her stomach twist. This was not just a reckless mistake. It was a calculated betrayal. Her mind raced back to that afternoon, 3 months ago, when Ava had shown up at her apartment. The rare visit had struck Eleanor as odd even then. Ava had been unusually warm, offering to make tea, reminiscing about their childhood. She had laughed, called Eleanor the smartest person she knew, and insisted she just wanted to spend some quality time together. At the time, Eleanor had been busy, distracted by work. She had barely noticed Ava moving around the kitchen, casually reaching for her purse while pretending to refill her cup. It had seemed like nothing. But now, as the pieces clicked into place, Eleanor realized the truth. Ava had stolen her credit card. Eleanor's hands tightened into fists. She had spent a lifetime covering for Ava. Apologizing for her sister's mistakes. Cleaning up the messes she left behind. But this? This was something else entirely. She took a slow, deliberate breath. The old Eleanor might have hesitated. She might have convinced herself that Ava did not mean it, that it was just another reckless decision she had not thought through. But the Eleanor sitting in this office, staring at undeniable proof, was not going to let it slide. She reached for her phone and dialed the fraud department of her credit card company. "Yes, I need to report unauthorized transactions," she said, her voice steady. "And I need full documentation of every charge." The customer service agent asked if she suspected someone had stolen her card. Eleanor hesitated for a brief second before answering. "Yes," she said firmly. "And I know exactly who it was." After securing the account and requesting detailed records, Eleanor sat back, fingers tapping against the desk. She had the facts. Now she needed proof that no one, not even their parents, could deny. Opening her email, she began gathering evidence. Screenshots of Ava's social media posts, timestamps that matched the charges, and records of flights and hotel stays. She cross-referenced everything, layering detail upon detail. Ava had left a digital trail a mile wide, and Eleanor was going to use every bit of it. Then, just as she finished compiling the documents, her phone buzzed again. It was another post from her parents. A photo of them in Barcelona, standing in front of the Sagrada Familia. Ava in the center, dressed head to toe in designer clothes, her signature radiant smile directed at the camera. The caption made Eleanor's stomach churn. "Thanks to Ava, we are making the best memories of our lives. She is truly the most generous daughter." Eleanor felt something inside her snap. For years, she had tolerated their blind favoritism. Their endless praise of Ava's so-called accomplishments. Their failure to see how much effort Eleanor had put into every aspect of her life while Ava skated by, taking shortcuts at every turn. But this was different. This was not just about emotional neglect or unfair treatment. This was fraud. And Ava had not just stolen from her. She had built an entire illusion of generosity, letting their parents believe she was the one taking care of them. Eleanor picked up her phone and sent a short, direct message to Ava. "We need to talk." The response came within seconds. "Hey sis, what's up? Hope you're doing well. Just landed back in New York. We should get brunch." Brunch. As if nothing had happened. As if she had not just stolen thousands of dollars and used it to play the role of the perfect daughter. Eleanor's jaw clenched. "No brunch," she replied. "Meet me at my apartment. Tonight." For the first time in her life, she was not going to let Ava charm her way out of this. That evening, as the sun set over Manhattan, Eleanor stood in her apartment, waiting. Her heart pounded, but not with hesitation. With resolve. When the doorbell rang, she opened it to find Ava standing there, looking effortlessly chic in a designer coat, sunglasses perched on her head. "Eleanor." Ava beamed, stepping forward as if to hug her. "I missed you. I brought a bottle of wine." "Cut the act," Eleanor interrupted. Ava blinked, taken aback. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice laced with forced innocence. Eleanor walked to her desk, picked up the folder of documents she had compiled, and dropped it onto the coffee table between them. "This," Eleanor said coolly, "is proof that you stole my credit card and used it to fund your entire trip." Ava laughed, nervously at first, then with exaggerated ease. "Eleanor, come on. You think I would steal from my own sister?" "I don't think," Eleanor shot back. "I know." Ava's smile faltered. "I was going to pay you back," she said quickly. Things have been tight, and I knew you wouldn't miss it. You make more in a month than I do in a year." Eleanor let out a slow breath. "You are unbelievable," she said. "Do you even hear yourself? You let Mom and Dad believe you paid for that trip. You let them think you were the one taking care of them. And all this time, you were stealing from me." Ava's lips parted as if she wanted to argue, but no words came out. Eleanor leaned in, her voice steady and cold. "I'm done protecting you," she said. "Tomorrow, I am going to tell Mom and Dad exactly what you did. I am going to the police to file an official fraud report. And this time, you are going to face the consequences." For the first time, true panic flickered in Ava's eyes. "Eleanor, please," she whispered. "I made a mistake." Eleanor straightened, crossing her arms. "Yes," she said. "And for once in your life, you are going to own up to it." Ava's face paled. The weight of reality was finally sinking in. Eleanor had spent a lifetime being the responsible one, the dependable one. She had spent years allowing Ava to walk away from her mistakes without consequence. But that ended tonight. Eleanor stood at JFK Airport's arrival terminal, her posture composed but her mind racing. The large digital board displayed the flight information. Air France Flight 023 from Paris had landed on schedule. Outside the glass walls, the summer sun cast long shadows across the polished floors. Around her, travelers reunited with loved ones, exchanging hugs and laughter. But for Eleanor, this was not a homecoming. This was a reckoning. Beside her stood Detective Lisa Carter from the NYPD Financial Crimes Unit and Michael Reed, a fraud investigator from her credit card company. The weight of what was about to happen pressed down on Eleanor's shoulders, but she did not waver. She had spent her entire life cleaning up Ava's messes, but this time was different. This time, Ava would answer for what she had done. She adjusted the sleeves of her tailored navy blue suit, the same one she wore to high-stakes board meetings. Today was no different, except the stakes were personal. "Miss Davis," Detective Carter said quietly, "are you sure you want to go through with this?" Eleanor's eyes remained fixed on the arrival gate. "Yes," she said firmly. The doors slid open. First, their father, William Davis, emerged in his usual crisp dress shirt, a new designer trench coat draped over his arm. Their mother, Patricia, followed, her Chanel sunglasses perched on her nose, the latest Louis Vuitton bag hanging from her shoulder. Finally, Ava appeared, walking with the confidence of someone who had never faced consequences a day in her life. She looked like she had stepped straight out of a fashion magazine, head to toe in luxury, her long blonde hair cascading in soft waves, her designer dress perfectly tailored. In one hand, she wheeled a monogrammed suitcase, in the other, she scrolled casually through her phone, oblivious to what awaited her. Eleanor felt a strange sense of detachment as she watched them approach, their parents beaming with pride. "Ava really outdid herself this time," Patricia said, squeezing her daughter's arm. "She made this trip unforgettable." Eleanor took a slow breath, steadying herself. "Yes," she said, her voice unreadable. "I am sure it was." Ava finally looked up and spotted her. A flash of surprise flickered across her face, quickly masked by a radiant smile. "Eleanor," she exclaimed, striding forward. "What a nice surprise. Did you come to welcome us home?" Before Eleanor could respond, Detective Carter stepped forward, flipping open her badge. "Ava Davis," she said in a firm, clear voice, "you are under arrest for credit card fraud, identity theft, and financial misconduct." The terminal fell silent. Ava's confident stride faltered. Her phone slipped from her fingers, clattering onto the polished floor. "What?" William's voice broke the stunned silence. "There must be some mistake." Patricia's face paled. The detective continued, her voice calm but unyielding. "We have evidence that over $50,000 in fraudulent charges were made using a stolen credit card belonging to your sister, Eleanor Davis." She nodded toward Michael Reed, who held a file of printed statements. "These transactions match the dates and locations of your recent vacation, including luxury hotels, first-class flights, and designer purchases." Eleanor watched as the realization dawned on their parents. Their once proud expressions crumbled into confusion. Ava's lips parted as if to protest, but no words came out. "No, no, no," Patricia finally stammered, shaking her head. "This must be a misunderstanding. Ava would never." "Mom," Eleanor interrupted, her voice steady but sharp. "Stop." She turned to Ava, who stood frozen, her perfectly curated image shattering before everyone's eyes. "Tell them," Eleanor said, folding her arms. "Tell them the truth." Ava swallowed hard, her gaze darting between their parents and the detective. I was going to pay it back," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just needed time." Eleanor's jaw clenched. "Time?" she repeated, her tone laced with disbelief. "Time for what, Ava? Time to keep lying? Time to keep pretending you are something you are not?" Tears welled in Ava's eyes. "I did it for us," she choked out. "For the family. I wanted Mom and Dad to have something special." Eleanor's stomach twisted. The sheer audacity of the excuse almost made her laugh. "You wanted them to have something special," she echoed. "So you stole from me. You let them believe you paid for this trip out of generosity, when in reality, you were using money that was not yours. Ava shook her head desperately. I was going to fix it, she insisted. Once my brand took off, once I got the right sponsorships. There are no sponsorships, Ava, Eleanor cut her off. There never were. The weight of the truth crushed whatever was left of Ava's bravado. Their father, silent until now, finally spoke. His voice was hoarse, almost broken. Ava, he whispered. Tell me this isn't true. Ava could not meet his eyes. Patricia let out a shaky breath. Oh my God, she murmured, pressing a hand to her forehead. All this time, we thought. Eleanor turned back to the detective. Take her, she said quietly. Ava let out a broken sob as Detective Carter stepped forward, reciting her rights. The cuffs clicked around her wrists. The sight of Ava, the golden child, the perfect daughter, being led away in handcuffs was something Eleanor never thought she would witness. As the terminal staff and travelers whispered, watching the scene unfold, Patricia finally turned to Eleanor, her voice trembling. Eleanor, she breathed. What have we done? Eleanor let out a slow exhale, the tension that had gripped her chest for years finally beginning to loosen. You let her believe she could get away with anything, she said simply. And she did. Until now. Their father ran a hand over his face, looking years older. Eleanor did not stay to hear what else they had to say. She picked up her briefcase, turned on her heel, and walked away, leaving behind the weight of a past she no longer had to carry. Eleanor sat in the cold, sterile waiting area of the NYPD Financial Crimes Division. The walls were a dull gray, the overhead fluorescent lights casting a harsh glow on everything beneath them. A clock on the wall ticked methodically, each second stretching longer than it should. Across from her, her parents sat in stunned silence. Ava was being processed in the next room. No cameras. No social media filters. No curated luxury. Just the reality of steel bars and the consequence of her choices. For years, Eleanor had imagined what it would feel like if Ava were ever forced to face the truth. But now that it was happening, the moment did not bring her the satisfaction she expected. It felt empty. Patricia sat with her hands tightly folded in her lap, her perfectly manicured nails digging into her palms. Her usually composed demeanor was unraveling, and her expression was unreadable. William had barely spoken since they left the airport. He sat hunched forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. None of them knew what to say. Eleanor was the first to break the silence. You asked me earlier, she said, her voice even but heavy, what have we done? Her mother inhaled sharply, as if the words physically struck her. Eleanor turned to look at them, her expression unreadable. You enabled her. You rewarded her for her lies. You made her believe she was untouchable. Patricia shook her head, her lips parting to argue, but she had nothing to say. Eleanor continued, her voice steady. And in the process, you ignored me. You made me feel like I was never enough. No matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I achieved, Ava was always the one who mattered more. Her father let out a deep sigh, rubbing a hand over his face. We never meant to make you feel that way, he muttered. Eleanor gave a small, humorless laugh. Maybe not. But you did. For the first time, Patricia's expression broke. Eleanor, we were proud of you, she whispered. We thought Ava needed more support. She was not like you. She wasn't as strong. Eleanor's jaw clenched. That was the problem. Ava had never been strong because she had never needed to be. She stole from me, Eleanor said, her voice firmer now. $50,000, Mom. She used my money to buy your affection. And you let her. A deep silence settled between them. William finally sat up straighter. His face looked more tired than Eleanor had ever seen it. I checked the retirement account, he said quietly. There's almost nothing left. Patricia's head snapped toward him, panic flashing in her eyes. What? William swallowed hard. She took from us too, he said. Withdrawals we never approved. Investments in fake business ventures. Eleanor's stomach dropped. She had suspected Ava's financial trouble ran deeper than just her stolen credit card, but she had not realized the extent of it. Patricia shook her head rapidly, as if denying reality would change it. No, she whispered. That's not possible. Ava would never. Eleanor cut her off. She did, she said coldly. And now you finally see it. Patricia covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes filling with tears. For the first time in her life, Eleanor felt like her mother was truly seeing the damage Ava had done. But it was too late. Just then, the door to the interrogation room opened. Detective Lisa Carter stepped out, her expression unreadable. She admitted to everything, she said, holding up a file. The fraudulent charges. The stolen identity. The withdrawals from your accounts. Patricia let out a strangled sob. William closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. Eleanor remained still. There's more, Detective Carter continued. Her social media investment scams, she conned multiple people into giving her money based on fake promises. We are looking at damages totaling over $700,000. Patricia gasped. No, she whispered. This can't be real. It's real, the detective said grimly. She could be facing serious prison time. A heavy silence settled in the room. Eleanor exhaled slowly. She had been prepared for Ava to face consequences, but even she had not anticipated the scale of destruction her sister had left in her wake. Her mother broke down into quiet sobs. Her father sat motionless, staring blankly at the floor. For once, Eleanor did not try to fix things. She had always been the one to clean up Ava's messes, to shoulder the responsibility no one else wanted. But this time, she let the silence stretch, let the weight of the truth settle on their parents' shoulders. After what felt like an eternity, William finally spoke. What do we do now? Eleanor took a deep breath. You rebuild, she said simply. And you start by accepting that Ava is not the daughter you thought she was. Patricia wiped at her eyes, nodding weakly. Eleanor stood. I will help you, she said. But only if you take accountability for the choices you made. Her mother swallowed hard, looking up at her. And if we do? Eleanor met her gaze. Then maybe we can start over. No promises. No reassurances. Just the first steps toward something real. As she walked toward the exit, her phone buzzed. A message from her bank. Fraudulent charges refunded. Investigation complete. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting out a slow breath. It was over. And for the first time in a long time, she felt free. 6 months had passed since the day everything fell apart. Since Ava had been arrested. Since Eleanor had finally stopped carrying the weight of her family's dysfunction alone. The seasons had shifted, trading the summer heat for crisp autumn air. The trees in Central Park had turned golden, their leaves floating gently onto the sidewalks. Eleanor sat at an outdoor cafe on the Upper East Side, waiting. A steaming cup of black coffee sat in front of her, untouched. She glanced up as her parents approached. William, always meticulous in appearance, had softened in the past few months. His tailored suits were replaced by a simple wool coat, and there was something different about the way he carried himself, less rigid, less burdened by the expectations he once placed on his daughters. Patricia walked beside him, wearing a deep blue cashmere sweater instead of the designer labels she used to favor. Eleanor, her mother greeted, her voice softer than usual. She nodded in return. Mom. Dad. They sat down, the silence between them no longer suffocating, but reflective. The past 6 months had not been easy. Ava had been sentenced to 5 years in prison with mandatory restitution. The court had ordered her to repay nearly $95,000 to the victims of her fraudulent investment schemes. It was a devastating reality for their parents, but one they had finally begun to accept. "I spoke to Ava last week," Patricia said, stirring her tea absent-mindedly. "She's different." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "She's taking accounting courses in prison," William interjected, his tone unreadable. "She says it's the first time in her life she's actually working towards something real." Eleanor let that sink in. Ava had spent years crafting an illusion, manipulating people into believing she was someone she was not. Maybe, for the first time, she was starting to face who she really was. Their food arrived, a simple brunch plate, nothing extravagant. A stark contrast to the over-the-top meals their family used to celebrate. Yet, it felt more meaningful. "I have been going to counseling," Patricia admitted, glancing up at Eleanor. "The therapist helped me realize how much we contributed to all of this. How blind we were." Eleanor sipped her coffee, letting the words settle. Her mother had never been one to admit fault before. "We made mistakes," William added. "A lot of them." Eleanor looked at them both, really looked. They were trying. It would never erase the past, but it was a start. "I went to see Ava last month," Eleanor said finally. "She asked me something I didn't expect." Patricia's gaze sharpened. "What did she ask?" Eleanor hesitated before answering. "She asked me if I could ever forgive her." A long silence stretched between them. "And what did you say?" William asked. Eleanor exhaled slowly. "I told her I don't know." She expected her mother to bristle, to urge her to be the bigger person, to say family always comes first. But instead, Patricia nodded. "That's fair." Eleanor blinked, surprised. "You don't have to forgive her now," Patricia continued. "Maybe not ever. But the fact that you're willing to think about it means more than you realize." Eleanor swallowed hard. For so long, she had been the responsible one, the one expected to be stronger than everyone else. But today, for the first time, she did not feel like she was carrying everything alone. William reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small bankbook. "We have started rebuilding the retirement fund," he said. "It's slow, but it's happening." Eleanor took the book and flipped through the pages. The balance was growing. It was not much yet, but it was progress. "You don't have to fix this for us," William said, his voice steady. "We need to fix it ourselves." Eleanor nodded, closing the book. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of relief. Not because everything was perfect. Not because all the wounds had healed. But because, finally, they were moving forward. And that was enough. Blue Heart, if this story touched your heart, like this video to show your support. Speech balloon comment 1, if you believe family always finds a way back together. Loudspeaker, share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. Bell, don't forget to subscribe for more gripping, real-life stories that touch the soul. Eleanor Davis spent her life seeking validation, only to realize she was never the favored child. Ava, her sister, thrived on deception, crafting an illusion of success at Eleanor's expense. But when the truth surfaced, Eleanor did what she had never done, let Ava face the consequences. This story is about justice, self-worth, and breaking free from toxic family dynamics. True love is not about blind loyalty, it is about honesty. Eleanor's greatest strength was choosing herself, refusing to carry burdens that were never hers. In the end, healing begins with truth.